Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. A quiet but massive revolution is sweeping through the DIY, off-grid, and alternative housing communities. Architects, homesteaders, and budget-conscious families are completely abandoning traditional stick-built homes. Instead, they are combining two wildly different architectural concepts from completely different eras of history. They are taking the indestructible military-grade engineering of the World War II Quonset Hut and smashing it together with the brilliant passive cooling layout of the 19th century Southern Dogtrot house. The result is the Dogtrot Quonset Hut. It is visually striking, brutally strong, highly energy efficient, and most importantly, shockingly affordable. Today, we are going to pop the hood on this architectural mashup. We are going to explore the fascinating history of these two designs, break down the brilliant physics and thermodynamics of how they work together, and explain exactly why this specific steel structure has suddenly become the most talked about alternative budget build of the year. If you are looking for a way to build a fortress without breaking the bank, grab a notepad. Let's dive in.
To truly appreciate the genius of the Dogtrot Quonset Hut, you first have to understand the DNA of its two parent structures. Let's start with the Quonset Hut. In the early 1940s, at the outbreak of World War II, the United States Navy faced a massive logistical nightmare. They needed to house millions of troops across the globe, from the freezing tundra of Alaska to the sweltering jungles of the South Pacific. They needed a building that was lightweight, easy to ship, incredibly strong, and capable of being assembled in a matter of hours by a crew of completely unskilled laborers using nothing but hand tools. Engineers at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, delivered the perfect solution. They created a self-supporting semicircular arch made from corrugated galvanized steel. Because the arch itself is one of the strongest shapes in physics, the building did not need any complex internal framing, load-bearing walls, or heavy roof trusses. The curved steel was the roof, and it was the wall. It was practically indestructible. Now, let's look at the other half of our equation, the Dogtrot layout. Travel back 100 years earlier to the Appalachian Mountains and the deep American South. Pioneers were trying to survive the brutal, humid summers long before the invention of mechanical air conditioning. To keep from baking alive inside a stuffy wooden cabin, they designed a brilliant floor plan. Instead of building one large cabin, they built two smaller, separate cabins side by side, leaving a wide open gap of about 10 to 15 feet between them. They then built one continuous roof over the top of both cabins, covering that central gap. This covered, open-air corridor running straight through the center of the home was the breezeway. It funneled the wind, creating a constant, shaded, high-velocity draft. It became the coolest spot on the property, and because the family dog would trot back and forth through the shade all day, it earned the famous nickname, the Dogtrot. Fast forward to today. Builders have realized that if you take a massive long Quonset hut and simply leave the middle section completely open to the elements while enclosing the two ends, you achieve architectural perfection. You get the cheap, indestructible shell of the military steel hut, perfectly married to the zero-energy passive cooling of the Pioneer breezeway.
Let's talk about the exact reason why everyone is suddenly obsessed with this concept. The money. How does building a Dogtrot Quonset Hut actually save you tens of thousands of dollars compared to a normal house? It comes down to a concept builders call simplification of the envelope. Think about the exterior shell of a traditional stick-built home. You have to pay a framing crew to build the wooden walls. You have to pay them to build the complex roof structure. Then you have to buy exterior sheathing. Then you pay a siding crew to install vinyl, brick, or wood siding on the walls. Finally, you pay a completely separate roofing crew to install shingles or metal panels on the top. That is 4 or 5 separate layers of expensive materials installed by multiple specialized crews, taking weeks or even months to finish. Every single day those crews are on your property, you are bleeding money in labor costs. A Quonset hut obliterates this complex supply chain. The corrugated steel arch is the framing, the siding, and the roof, all in one single continuous piece of material. There is no wood to rot, no shingles to blow off, and no siding to paint. You buy a Quonset hut as a pre-engineered kit. A flatbed truck delivers a massive stack of curved steel panels and several buckets of heavy-duty bolts. You pour a basic concrete foundation, and then a small crew, often just the homeowner and a few friends, begins bolting the arches together on the ground. Once an arch is bolted together, you use a rope, a winch, or a small tractor to hoist it upright. You bolt it to the foundation, and then you bolt it to the arch next to it. You just repeat that process until you have a massive weatherproof steel tunnel. A dedicated crew of amateurs can assemble a 40-foot Quonset Hut shell in a matter of days. You have entirely bypassed the expensive framing crew, the siding crew, and the roofing crew. But the Dogtrot layout takes these financial savings a massive step further through the use of unconditioned space. When you build a standard Quonset Hut, you eventually have to frame, insulate, and air condition the entire massive interior. That interior finish out is where the real money is spent. However, by adopting the Dogtrot design, you might dedicate 30% of that massive steel shell to the central open-air breezeway. Because that breezeway is unconditioned space, meaning it is not heated or cooled, you do not have to buy insulation for it. You do not have to frame interior walls for it. You do not have to hang drywall or run expensive HVAC ductwork through it. You are getting the visual footprint and the sheltered entertaining area of a massive home, but you are only paying the premium interior finish-out costs for the two smaller, enclosed cabins on either end.
Affordability is great, but in today's world, affordability means nothing if your house cannot survive the environment. With extreme weather events, from massive hurricanes to devastating wildfires becoming more frequent and severe, the way we view residential construction is rapidly shifting. Insurance premiums for traditional wooden homes in coastal areas or forested regions are skyrocketing. Some major insurance companies are pulling out of entire states completely. This is where the military heritage of the Quonset Hut absolutely shines. It is, quite literally, a bunker. Let's look at wind resistance. A traditional house has vertical walls in a pitched roof with overhanging eaves. In a severe hurricane or a tornado, the wind hits the flat, vertical wall and creates massive pressure. Worse, the wind gets caught underneath those overhanging roof eaves, creating an upward lift that acts exactly like an airplane wing. That upward pressure is what violently rips roofs off of suburban homes. A Quonset Hut has no flat walls on its sides, and it has absolutely no overhanging eaves. Its semicircular shape is perfectly aerodynamic. When gale force winds hit the structure, the wind is naturally directed up and over the curve. There is nothing for the wind to grab onto. Many heavy-gauge steel Quonset Huts are easily rated to withstand Category 5 hurricane winds, upwards of 170 miles per hour. Now, let's talk about fire. If you are building a rural homestead or a cabin in the woods, wildfire is your greatest threat. A traditional home built out of pine lumber, wrapped in synthetic house wrap, and covered in asphalt shingles is essentially a massive pile of kindling waiting for a stray ember. A Quonset Hut is 100% commercial-grade steel. It is entirely non-combustible. An ember cannot ignite corrugated metal. While the interior contents could still be damaged by extreme radiant heat, the structural shell itself will stand strong. Add to this the fact that steel cannot be eaten by termites, cannot develop dry rot, and does not harbor mold in its exterior structure. When you build a Dogtrot Quonset, you are not just building a cheap house, you are building an intergenerational fortress that requires almost zero exterior maintenance.
Okay, it is time for a very important reality check. If you take away only one piece of information from this entire video, let it be this. A steel building sitting in the direct summer sun is a literal oven. Metal is an incredible conductor of heat. If you build a Quonset Hut and you do not insulate it properly, you will be utterly miserable. You cannot just shove cheap fiberglass bat insulation against a metal wall. The warm, humid air from inside the house will hit the freezing cold steel during the winter, causing severe condensation. Your walls will literally rain on the inside, leading to catastrophic rust and mold. To make a Quonset Hut habitable, you absolutely must use closed-cell spray foam insulation. This is non-negotiable. After the steel shell is erected, a professional crew will spray a thick layer of this expanding foam directly onto the interior of the corrugated steel. The foam expands and hardens,
tightly filling every single gap, crack, and bolt hole. It completely stops thermal bridging. It acts as an absolute moisture barrier, and it creates an incredibly tight, highly energy-efficient thermal envelope. After your two end cabins are sealed with spray foam, they become remarkably cheap to heat and cool. But this is where the Dogtrot layout comes back into play, acting as your primary passive cooling system. The massive open-air breezeway separating your two insulated cabins operates on a principle of fluid dynamics called the Venturi effect. Because the heavy steel arch provides deep, continuous shade over the breezeway, the air sitting inside that corridor remains significantly cooler than the air baking in the sun outside. As the hot air outside naturally rises, it creates a lower pressure zone. The cooler, denser air from inside your shaded breezeway is literally sucked outward to fill that void. Furthermore, any natural breeze blowing across your property is funneled into the large opening of the breezeway. As the air is forced through the corridor, it is compressed, which actually increases the velocity of the wind. By placing large, operable windows or sliding glass doors on the interior walls that face the breezeway, you can capture that manufactured wind. On a warm spring day, you do not need to turn on your air conditioner. You simply open the doors facing the breezeway and let the architecture pull a high-velocity shaded breeze directly through your living room and bedrooms.
One of the biggest hurdles to building a home is securing financing. Traditional banks are notoriously difficult to work with when it comes to unique, non-traditional builds. Getting a massive construction loan for a steel, semicircular Dogtrot house can be an uphill battle because banks rely on local comparables, and there probably isn't another house like yours in the county. But the Dogtrot Quonset Hut offers an incredible financial workaround. Because of its modular nature, it is the absolute perfect candidate for phased construction. Phased construction simply means building your home in stages over a period of years, paying in cash as you go, and entirely bypassing the need for a massive high-interest bank loan. Because a Quonset hut is essentially a giant Lego set made of repeating arches, you control the length. Let's say your ultimate dream is an 80-foot-long Dogtrot structure. In Phase 1, you pour the foundation, but you only purchase enough steel arches to build a 30-foot-long enclosed cabin on one end of the slab. You spray foam it, frame out a small studio apartment interior with a bathroom and a kitchenette, and you move in. You now have a secure, indestructible, hyper-efficient tiny home. You are living rent-free and mortgage-free. You live in that small cabin for 2 years, saving the cash that you would have been throwing away on rent. In Phase 2, you order another stack of steel arches. You erect them on the opposite end of your foundation, building your second enclosed cabin. This becomes your master suite and your permanent bedrooms. Finally, in Phase 3, you buy the last set of arches to connect the two enclosed cabins, forming the roof over the central Dogtrot breezeway. You convert your original tiny home entirely into a massive kitchen and living room. You have just built an incredible, custom, sprawling architectural home completely out of pocket on your own timeline. The Dogtrot layout naturally dictates this split-phase approach, making it the ultimate strategy for the debt-free homesteader.